Alright, for today's video, it's kind of the worst case scenario. I am doing a tire service in an active lane, and this is on a road with a 45 mile per hour speed limit. So the first thing I'm going to do is put out some cones. So I keep cones in the bed of my truck. I carry 7 cones, and in this case I'm just going to use 3 of them to put a little taper behind my truck. And you'll see a little bit later in the video that I'm going to be really glad that I put out these cones, because several drivers get pretty close to me. And you know, nowadays with all the distractions, people just aren't paying attention, and you got to make sure that you're really visible and taking all the steps you can to be safe. And so I start out with the first cone right on the dashed white line, and then I count out about 50 feet for the next cone, and then another 50 feet for the furthest back cone. So the furthest cone is 100 feet from the back of my truck. And I always try to use my cones in this situation. I prefer cones over road flares because, you know, it's a physical thing. You know, road flares, people just drive right over them. But with cones, you know, if people don't see them, they'll at least hit them and hopefully hear them, you know, drag them under their car, get some feedback, and hopefully, you know, look up and see what they're about to hit. Whereas with road flares, you really don't get that. So I get back to the customer, and of course, you know, she's disabled, and so she's sitting in her car, and she opens up the back, and I'm communicating with her, but you know, I'm also grabbing the spare, pulling that out, and then go back to my truck to grab all the equipment that I'm going to need for this job. And I use the decked drawer system in my bed, so that's where all my equipment is carried. So I grab my 4-way, grab my air compressor, and then my tool bag, and my hydraulic jack, and my torque wrench, and a wheel chock, and the handle for my jack. And then I quickly close up the tailgate again because I have lights, LED lights on my tailgate, so that helps my visibility having the tailgate closed. I always want to close that up right away. And so I just throw my equipment on this, you know, the grass over here, and then move it up to the car. Place my wheel chock. Go back to grab the rest of the equipment that I put in the grass, and then bring that up. So first thing is put some air in the tire, get the pump going, and it's a Works rechargeable, so it's battery operated pump. So I like to hook it up and then just kind of let it do its thing while I'm going ahead and trying to remove the flat tire. So I get the air compressor going. And then check my jack placement, and you can see there's some snow in the gutter area, so it's a little bit of a tight space. So I place my hydraulic jack, and then start working on the lug nuts. And I always like to use my 4-way to manually loosen the lug nuts because I feel like it gives more feedback. And so that way, you know, sometimes when you know you have lug nuts that have been put on cross-threaded or something like that, or there's some other issue with a stud, you can feel it when you're loosening it, where you don't get that feedback when you use an impact driver. So I get them loosened and then go ahead and jack up the car. And so behind me, this is the first guy that apparently doesn't see all my lights, my traffic arrow, my light bar, and my cones. And so he gets stuck. He passes the first cone, and he gets stuck back there and has to wait for traffic. So again, you know, if I didn't have my cones, then he would be right on my bumper. So I put the cones there to, you know, create the taper, but also to give me a little buffer and vehicles a little bit of advance warning. So I jack up the car. And then get my impact wrench, remove all the lug nuts, and pull the tire off. So I go ahead and just place the tire on the road next to the spare. And then the nice thing about my little Works tire inflator, my air compressor, super light. So it's battery operated, super light. And so if it's not done, I can just pick it up with the tire and just let it keep working while I'm mounting the tire. So that's a nice feature, that very light air compressor. So here's number 2, second guy comes up behind me and gets pretty close, but is able to find a spot to merge in. So I go ahead and get the tire mounted. Here's the third guy. Same thing. Gets really close. Is past my first cone. And then finally finds a spot and merges in. So, on this day, these cones have really saved my butt. I mean, who knows what would have happened if I hadn't had my cones out. I really don't like to rely on just my vehicle lighting. I like to put out cones or road flares or triangles or something back there. So I'll go ahead and load up the flat tire. It's a little bit of a jigsaw puzzle trying to figure out how to get the tire in there and still have room for the driver's walker. But I figured it out, and then go ahead and close the back hatch. Start grabbing all my gear, get my photos of my work, photo of the license plate, photo of the VIN, the mileage, and then signature from the customer. And a quick safety reminder about, not driving over 50 miles an hour on a donut. And then I start loading up my gear in the back. So then the customer takes off and I go to retrieve my cones. And again, I've got somebody that, it's like, what are you doing? Almost hits my cone. Apparently completely oblivious, and then almost hits somebody trying to merge into the middle lane. And then I have other vehicles back here that I end up kind of having to wave at them, give them some direction to move over to the left, to their left. And then once it clears a little bit, there's a little break, and so I take the opportunity to pick up my cones. But yeah, that was four folks that came pretty close, and just were oblivious, despite all the lights and the traffic arrow. But so pick up my cones, and they're strapped down in my truck with a steel cable. Grab the cable, and then it's just a quick latch, and then they're secured to my truck. And so at this point, I am out of here. So yeah, those when you're working in the lane, I mean, that's never fun, very dangerous, and you got to be highly visible and try and do some traffic control with the cones or triangles or road flares or whatever you have. But yeah, so that's it. Hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.